Today, I'm going to try to draw these unusually striking plants in Krakow, Poland. And although this is one of the more confined references that I've done, it may be one of the most beautiful. I don't know about you, but everything I'm looking at here is pretty pretty. And wouldn't it be nice if I could take some of that and put it to paper? Sure would. So let's see how I don't do that. Really, though, this one was tough, and for a lot of reasons, one of which being the depth. In the reference video that you're watching, obviously you can sense that there's depth, but the effect of it is essentially lost in two dimensions. You can make out a lot of individual leaves here, and they all lie pretty flat. Some of them are bigger or smaller or brighter or darker, sure. That's what suggests the dimensionality. But, and I know I've spoken about this at length, it is incomparable to the in-person view. I won't harp on it much because obviously a picture is different than real life, but seeing it here as I record this voiceover just reminds me of the staggering difference. As I say this, I'm wondering, would it help to close an eye, like one eye for stuff like this? Is that something that artists typically do? Don't the eyes rely on each other for depth perception? If that's true, which maybe it is, I don't know. Hopefully you don't watch these for educational purposes. But if it is true, when I close one of them, I wonder if that would help me with stuff like this, especially so close up. If I remember to try that out, I'll get back to you. Anyway, for this drawing, I'm starting with these little clumps of flowers. I don't want any of the lines that I'll eventually make into leaves getting in the way or overlapping, because the flowery areas are by far the brightest part of this reference. When I was practicing this before I started, I kept making the tiny individual flowers bolder than necessary, and those dark lines took away the light and airy feel of them. After a few tries, though, I ended up landing on these groups of like lightly drawn circles. That got the message across that they were flowers among surrounding foliage. And by keeping them on top, like I drew them first, so I wouldn't have to draw them over something else. Not that that would have worked anyway. By doing that, they stand out. I also didn't pay any attention whatsoever to where exactly each little bunch was located, or how big any of them were, or how many of them were there, because I really don't think that matters here. I'm already just trying to keep my head above water with something like this, so dividing that time between detail and composition felt a little like a waste. Instead, once I had the basic idea of how I'd go about drawing these, I scattered them around the page, using the reference to inform stuff like general shapes, since they're not perfect circles, or where two or more might overlap. I think that part was useful, but my time would have been much better spent had I focused on the surrounding leaves. I did draw a few in the sketchbook, but naively deemed them simple compared to the flowers. Unfortunately for me, while the shape of these leaves is simple enough, although even that I do struggle with, it's their relationship to one another that I didn't quite figure out. There are a lot of leaves here, and if you'd asked me whether or not I was going to draw every one, I would have said no, of course not. But hopefully your follow-up question would sound something like, okay, then what are you going to do with them? Because that would have been pretty helpful for me to consider. Like I mentioned yesterday, and on that note, I'd like to build up a kind of bank in my head so that I know when and how to imply or fake, more candidly, overwhelming textures, or in this case, shapes. I think I could have kept this a lot cleaner if I didn't shade anything at all, kept the shapes neater, like more graceful and less rushed, and homed in intensely on the tiny details in the flowers. I also would have drawn way fewer individual leaves because this whole drawing falls into a strange in-between where there aren't enough leaves to convey realistically how many there really are, and there are too many. I draw too many to get just the suggestion of them. I feel like I get stuck in this spot pretty often where I'm doing too little to be exact, but too much to be abstract, and it constantly is getting me into trouble. Before I know it, I'm in too deep, but unfortunately, I don't know how to swim. And on that uplifting note, I want to take a second to let you know how much I appreciate your viewership. I'm often kind of silly when it comes to the, YouTube aspect of this thing, like subscribing and liking and all that stuff, which sounds ridiculous because what else would this be? But from my perspective, this is just drawing and recording, whether that's audio or visual. I don't think of it in terms of sharing it to the public, but at the end of the day, at the end of the process, that is exactly what it is. I actually had conversations with a close friend about these videos way before I started recording them, and he was great. He would ask tons of questions when I would get two in my head, like, do you want to do this because you want to learn how to draw, or do you want people to see it? And the answer in my head, the romantic in me, would say, it's for the drawing. Well, first it's for the drawing, then it's for the nice videos I'll make, then way, way down the line, it's for whatever's left, the YouTube of it all. But the real me, the honest one without the rose-colored glasses, would say, wait a second. Don't lie to your friend and don't lie to yourself. If you want to learn how to draw, go learn to draw. You have plenty of other hobbies this would fit right in. But if you're doing this because you want the whole thing, because you want all of it, well, that's what you say. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make something for other people, regardless of what comes of it. It doesn't need to be any different from making something for yourself, as long as you don't let it. And I haven't. I don't let that part of the process dictate the process as a whole, and I won't. But that still makes it part of it. It is still part of the process. I do still go through the rigmarole to make these, and it's not for the exclusive purpose of watching myself improve. It's also to exhibit. It's a show I'm putting on, and while that part is something I'm getting used to, it's something I've learned to accept and at this point embrace, actually. So anyway, with all of that, I just want to say thank you for spending some of your time watching my videos. If I'm as honest as I possibly can be, if no one was watching for months on end, I don't think I'd have it in me to continue. I hope I would keep drawing, day by day, one ugly step at a time. But this process as a whole would be inconceivable without you on the other end. I'd be like an astronaut sending transmissions to no one. And I feel fortunate that I'm in no such position. So genuinely, thank you for being here. Okay, so now that that's done with, right about here is when I wish I could just stop myself. I think things were going reasonably well. There were still a few small things I'd add or change, but we've reached the tipping point. Right here, you get the sense that there are many leaves around, and maybe if I'd added some tiny details in the flowers, if I could manage something like that, this would all end up, just okay. Not that it's the worst thing in the world, but there were certainly some missteps taken here. The shading around the edges of the flowers, I had good intentions, but I don't know. I did it to imply the darker leaves down below, which would ideally help make the flowers themselves pop up. I don't think it was a terrible idea necessarily, but I didn't execute it well at all. And like I was talking about, it leaves me in this odd position where I'm going a little further without going all the way, and I'm getting stuck somewhere in the middle. However, with all that said, and this being only the second drawing like this, although I'd argue the other flower was much more straightforward, I'd say this was an experiment that taught me a lot and one I'd like to hopefully repeat often. Some of my favorite paintings are just flowers and foliage. So the better I can get at drawing them, the happier I think I will be. It'll get me one step closer to painting the types of things I would eventually like to paint. All right, lovely. And you know what? If I had some paint, my opinion might be different. But since I don't, and since I didn't, I think of this as just another step. On its own, it looks messy and ambiguous, and I don't like it very much. But I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think that's what counts. Well, I've told you what I think, so what do you think? Please let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you're enjoying the series, and tell all your friends to please do the same. I appreciate you for taking the time. Genuinely, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.